Welcome to Startup Hacks, a We Global podcast. We explore the stories and secret strategies that women entrepreneurs use to save time and money when bootstrapping and building their businesses. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapina. Welcome back. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapina, and today I'm very excited to have on the show Tanya Vucetic. Tanya is the CEO and co-founder of Blockforms. Blockforms is a workflow management tool for insurance brokers that simplifies the sale process with an intelligent one-to-many form completion. Tanya is a data scientist by profession with a past life in finance. She earned her MBA from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and her Master's of Science in Computational Analytics from Georgia Tech. Welcome, Tanya.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm so delighted to have you on the show. I wanted to start by asking if you could, as I normally do, if you could give us a little bit of a background of your history, where you grew up, what your life was like, and what kind of spurred you into the data science area. Very interesting that you went to school in Hong Kong also.
Yeah, sure. I am originally from the, San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up with international parents, so I'm first generation American, and public school kid, always interested in math and science, lived in California for the majority of my life. So I've always been surrounded by the tech world. I moved to LA to study economics, worked in finance, but always still had a calling to be a practitioner in the math and science world. So I bridged my finance experience by pursuing an MBA at a school where the primary focus was science and technology. So quickly I found myself in Hong Kong, also enjoying the international experience, fortifying my business acumen with a professional degree, and then learned to code. And that's kind of the language of the world this day and age. So I found myself navigating the sexy industry that is data science by actually, I love this story because people think of data scientists as those with PhDs, and you had to have done 10 years of research, and there's the applied field, and there's also the research, and I exist in the applied field. So the way I got into the profession was actually by ghost coding for a friend of mine who is a statistics PhD, and he didn't want to be hands-on keyboards. So I was secretly doing the work, and at the end of the big engagement, he gave me the credit and I was hired, and my data science career was born.
Wow, that's actually really interesting because, as I think you know, I founded a behavioral data analytics company that's machine learning AI driven, and my partner is a data scientist. And I never really appreciated until just now the difference between someone in the applied field and in the research field, because he spent like 30 years working in government, and it was all about neural network development and creating models and predictive analysis, et cetera. And I'm presuming that's all research.
Absolutely. So I take those findings and use those mathematical solutions to solve businesses' problems with the data that they have handy.
Interesting. And is there typically two different tracks for data scientists, like the applied side and then the research side, or is that pretty rare?
I would say there's definitely two different tracks depending on where your interests lie. There's a huge community online that is constantly reviewing each other's work and making the existing algorithms and larger packages better and better. So while that's definitely one track and one passion and hobby, many people are leveraging these tools that have been developed for them to make businesses more money and streamline processes, kind of like what I've done here with Blockforms.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, our listeners can't appreciate this, but Tanya happens to be a beautiful woman, and I'm sure if you walk into any conference, they would not peg you for the traditional data scientist.
No, that frequently comes up, that I do not fit the stereotype. And thank you for the compliment. It's like a fun party trick to ask to have people guess what I do for a living.
Right. I wanted to jump into Blockforms, obviously very important to our discussion today. But I do want to take a beat because selfishly, I'm actually the chairperson for Women in Tech for the California Technology Council. So I'm very curious about women who work in the technology area. And I'm just curious, have you found that the field has changed and evolved and become more female friendly, or do you feel like there's still a lot more work to be done there?
While there's a lot more work to be done in terms of the number of us as technologists in the field, I will say that the natural progression based on all of the work that's been done the past 10, 20 years is trending in the right direction. All of the universities have more women and women of color in math and sciences than ever before. So it's hard to be patient, but it's going in the right direction, and all of the work is paying off.
That's great. All right, so let's jump into Blockforms. I want to understand if you could share with our listeners, because it's always, I think, such a special moment for entrepreneurs and founders, that day, that moment where they start to think about, maybe I'm going to leave my job, or maybe I'm going to continue my job, but start noodling on this entrepreneurial venture, either alone or with other people. So give us a little backstory about what was going on in your life at the time, and how Blockforms kind of bubbled up and became real.
All righty. So Blockforms is not my brainchild. It's my co-founder's brainchild. And he is an employee benefits broker himself. He knows the pain point of people in this profession. And he had this idea to build a closed system which would reduce errors and the amount of time that people are interacting with forms, emailing, scanning, signing, printing, whiting out whenever there's an error, and redoing the whole process. And he pitched it to the company he currently still works as a broker for. And that agency is Marsh McLennan Agency. And they loved it. They had their Shark Tank, and they said, our lives would be so much better if this existed. However, we're not going to build it because we're not in the business of building software. And he said, okay, well, how about I build it? And they gave him written approval, free and clear, to go build this. And one of his mutual friends introduced him to me based on our respective skill sets. And we kind of formed a team of what was 4 people at the time, based on my business background and technological know-how. So where I'm really important is to be able to synthesize the problem that insurance brokers have to developers, and we brought in a developer. So we were all sitting around a coffee table. The dream was sold to us by my co-founder, and we got to work immediately on the product.
And give us a time frame. Was that this year or last year?
That was October 2018. So we've been at this a while. We incorporated March 2019.
Okay. So October 2018. Okay. So, sometimes people don't realize how long it takes, because there's a lot of right turns, left turns, 10 feet back, 5 feet forward.
True.
Right?
So true. I mean, if what we have, our fully functioning product today, does not look like what we sat and talked about on that day whatsoever.
So talk to us about where you're at, where the product is at now, and where the company has evolved to.
We just finished an accelerator program based in Santa Monica called the Pre-Accelerator. And we are currently in the middle of multiple pilot programs with different prospective clients. So we're in the process of collecting feedback, modifying the product, also updating the product. So what our technology specifically does is take really complicated forms, for example, the applications for employee benefits coverage, so Kaiser, Aetna, Blue Shield, and consolidates all of those forms. Once the individual populates the single consolidated form, we map that data back to the respective forms for submission. I lost my train of thought here.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I was actually thinking as you were talking, there's also a great airline app that allows you to put in all your information, and then you can kind of purchase from a variety of different airlines all in one fell swoop, and really kind of synthesizes all that data, which seems like that's also huge benefit in healthcare, especially when you're like comparing health insurance plans and deals, et cetera.
Yes, and thank you. That was the perfect reminder. So where we're at right now is also updating our product constantly because new forms are coming in for the new different products that these insurance carriers are offering. So while we have prospective customers interacting with our software, we're also continuously updating it for feedback and the new forms.
Mm-hmm. And in healthcare, I'd imagine that's a full-time job.
Oh, it sure is. I mean, we like to say, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll do it tomorrow," but we're really up all night, like making sure the thing works clean and clear and free without errors. That's the name of the game.
So you're in the you're in the MVP or pilot program now. It sounds like you're already working with some potential clients, getting some very valuable feedback on product market fit, which, the benefit, it seems, of your story is that your co-founder already had assessed, given his work experience in this company, that there was excellent product market fit. It was just a matter now of executing it and seeing if the product delivered on the promise. And how long do you anticipate you'll be in this stage?
I suspect another 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Our plan is to be revenue generating by April. So while we're in this phase with some customers, the cycle should mature to paid utilization of our product around the April timeframe.
And are you going to be, is this a web application or a mobile app or?
A web application, yes. Accessible by tablet, mobile phone, whatever device.
Well, I think it sounds like it's going to be a big success. And so talk to us now a little bit about your experience. So you have one foot in corporate America because you're still, based on our earlier conversations, you're still working in that space. And then you're also in the startup ecosystem. And given that you went through the pre-accelerator program, do you have just some, for listeners who maybe aren't entrepreneurs but are kind of thinking about it, you have any kind of feedback on the differences and what you liked or disliked or what was challenging?
I think the obvious challenge is the amount of time one person has. So I'm very fortunate that my day job is flexible with respect to, I know what I need to build. I can estimate how long it's going to take me. It doesn't matter what time of day I do it other than meetings scheduled. So I have the luxury of working on whatever I need to at different times of the day. When it comes to from the perspective of an entrepreneur, I've been given very different advice. Some investors and partners love that I'm moonlighting because it brings stability to my business. And some people suggest that I downplay that fact because some investors prefer the all-in, that's all you do day in and day out. Mm-hmm. So
yes,
it just, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, and I'm going to just chime in here now and just say I personally think that it is a issue with the startup ecosystem that there is this stigma. There are a couple stigmas. One is if you're a solopreneur, you're not as attractive because there's a presumption that you may not be able to work within a team structure. There's a lot of questions. The other assumption is if you're not working full time and if you haven't quit your job, you're not committed They're not sure if they invest in your company that you're going to leave your day job. There's a